GMB Pros, welcome everyone. I appreciate everyone that's on here. I just went live streaming. The meeting's being live streaming. Meeting, okay, that's fine. So welcome everyone to another Friday GMB Pros with Mr. Webb, literally the web our web guy here.
How's it
So
going?
you guys have seen him before. You guys know he's actually part of my team. So anytime like anything funky you need with your website or WordPress or questions, this is my go-to guy. Anything that needs to be fixed, Jeremy is the man. Again, thank you those that are watching, that'll come live on the Facebook. I appreciate all you guys' support on there. Those that are catching the replay, again, much love and success to everyone. I appreciate you guys. And it's funny, I don't realize how many of you catch the replay till, let's say, because William will take care of like the after stuff, posting, and like if he doesn't get on it very quickly, you guys will come on like, hey, where's the replay? Where's the replay? Where's the replay? So I appreciate you guys' support. I don't see that much in the back end, the replays, and we had a guy from London. He hit me up last night. I was working late. He hit me up last night. Hey, where's the replay? And yeah, he says, hey, bro, I catch the replays. So I really appreciate that. It's very encouraging. A lot goes on to put these together. So I appreciate those that are on here, those that are catching the Facebook Live, and those that catch the replays. Much appreciated. Again, guys, with that being said, GMB Pros, mine and William's goal for GMB Pros is twofold. One is to help you grow your agency, or two is help get better results with your clients, right? And we love to do that by bringing on guests that have a specialty, that love speaking about their particular gift that they bring to this industry as far as the marketing, right? Whatever they niche down. Jeremy, he's part of my team, and he's the web guy. So if you have any questions about web design, WordPress, it's funny, we're working on fixing one right now, and we were just talking about it. He has his preferences. I think all web guys do, right? They have their preferences, tools, the flow work, the framework, the wiring, the putting it together. But one thing that I like about Jeremy that I think makes him different than a lot of people out there is that he not only builds the website, but he kind of has that balance of SEO and building it for Google, right? Or SEO is building it for Google, I'm sorry. And like the aesthetics, building it for the client, for the user, the look, the feel of things, right? So, and always, if you guys have spoken to me before, any clients or anybody, you want to have that balance, right? All the hot zones, as my bestie, trained me, like your URL structure, H1, your title tag, your description, your images, right? Your interlinking, your schema, all that get dialed in, the density of the actual content, the LSI, the keywords, all that, putting it and making it look good, have a good flow of it. So today, guys, we have Jeremy. If you have any questions as far as like any trouble with your website, any issues that you may have with your website, I want to bring in Jeremy. That way you guys can ask, troubleshoot anything you may have. And one of the topics, because we're actually working on this right now, is like cloning the site, right? Like if you clone the site, will you lose? What happens to your SEO? And I actually asked this of Chris Palmer yesterday, right? And he had his input, which made sense, right? If the site is not getting any traffic, you're not really ranking, you cloning it, rebuilding it to fit all those like best practices that I mentioned, it doesn't really matter. Get it going in the right foot, getting the setup done correctly. So Jeremy, man, what's happening? How are you, my friend?
How's it going, guys? So, all right. So, what did you want me to talk about first? You want me to talk about cloning? Do you want to
Yeah,
like?
so
I'm all for it,
let's
man. What do you want
yeah,
to talk about today?
yeah, let's just make it casual, guys. If you have
Okay.
any troubleshooting, just because that's what we're kind of doing right now, working on is the hot topic. I know the last time we talked about like the Google Search Console, the
Hmm.
Bing tools, how to do that, how to validate. Today, just because we were dealing with that on one of our projects, is cloning.
Hmm.
How easy is it? What's the pros and cons? Is it different? Like in our case, right? If they
Hmm.
build it on WordPress Pro with regular, not WordPress Pro, Elementor Pro
Elementor
versus
with that one, yeah.
yeah, stuff like that. If you can kind of just cover that a little bit. And guys,
Uh,
please ask your question. Those that are in the live, please ask your questions if you want anything specific.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a twofold thing. Part of it, I think part of the question there is migration. So when you're just moving a site across servers, moving from, say, a developer built the site and then moved it over, that kind of thing. Depending on how it was done, some stuff does get lost. Also, depending on what kind of plugins were used during development, and whether or not those licenses carry over, and whether or not the new client that's now accepting this site has to then buy those licenses and that kind of stuff. So that plays a factor in some of these things that we're dealing with and kind of the project you're mentioning. But when it comes to cloning a site, um, it doesn't really matter whether you want to go build a site in raw WordPress or you want to go buy a theme, Elementor, Divi, or whatever you want to build your site in. Ultimately, it's what kind of SEO are you putting into it? What is the content overall? How's it organized? Of course. And then, if the original site had schema, but you didn't move it, kind of thing, well, you just lost that schema that you had in there, all of those different things. So cloning a site, essentially SEO wise, is really how much detail are you pulling over, kind of thing. And then are you buttoning it up or are you just bringing it over exactly? A site with great SEO already, it's already ranking well. Obviously, you want to try and keep that as exact as possible. If it's a new site and you're struggling through it, start fresh. Maybe write new schema as you go over, make sure everything's buttoned up. Of course, you might have missed something the first time you catch during that clone kind of thing. So just kind of playing into that. Anytime you're moving a site, you've got licensing that changes. There's a lot of things that are connected to the server that it was built on or the database, that kind of thing. So it's just a lot of different factors to take into there. Um,
Now, what kind of like troubles have you experiencing when it comes to like cloning or moving over a site? And then do you prefer, okay, so a customer has a site,
mhm.
maybe the old developer, has control, doesn't want to let it go. What is your thought like process of like, okay, they have a whole new URL. How easy is it to transfer? Like it's a clone, but is it really a clone when it's a whole different URL?
I see what you're saying. So essentially, you're talking about a situation of, say, I bought this website. I believe I own it. I go in. I now I'm hiring my SEO guy. And my SEO guy gets in there and he says, "You're a subscriber on your own site. You're not the admin. Can I get that admin password?" And come back and they're like, "We don't give out that." Like, so you never really bought a site. You kind of rented one from the company. And at that point, you're like, "But I need to do this SEO. How are we going to get in there?" And something that we've done quite a few times, me and you, we've moved sites over and essentially we trace them kind of thing. So we go through and think of copy and paste of all the text. We bring over all the images, we rebuild the design to make them look exactly the same. But then we also have to dig into the back end and we have to find out, was there any SEO there that's maybe going to be lost during this? Because at this point, all we've pulled over is just your content and your images. But even then, we might not have grabbed your alt text kind of thing. So you got to make sure you got in there and, so maybe there was some SEO in there that was doing you some good and you wanted to improve it, but now you've lost it because it wasn't traced properly, and that kind of thing. So, my thought process with that is just kind of I break it down from the start is what do people see? Let's make it look exactly like that. Then we go into the other site and we just start running SEO reports on it and say, okay, well, they had alt text there, they didn't have it there. get that transferred over. And then depending on the level of work that we're doing for that client, then we decide, okay, are we improving the SEO from here? Which best time to do that really is while you're doing the clone, because you're already in there moving alt text over, you're moving in meta description stuff. You might as well do it all at the same time. So if it's got one missing, fill it in. If it's got a good one, take it from the old site, that kind of thing. But just like anything, if you're trying to you're trying to trace a drawing of SpongeBob, you could probably pull it off and it looks pretty good. But if you're trying to, do a Mona Lisa, it's probably going to lose some details, kind of thing. So how good is the SEO? How good was the original site? And how good are you at tracing is kind of what you got to weigh when you go into those kind of things.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because I never thought like to think about the schema. So the
Mhm.
schema doesn't like the backend stuff doesn't translate over, or the anchor text or the interlinking, does that translate over?
When you're doing a tracing a site like that, it's as many details as you want to trace in. So you can spend days and maybe you're a decent artist and you can repaint the Mona Lisa and no one will know, kind of thing. But that all depends on how good you are, how many details you're, and how much time you're going to spend to pull all those over, kind of thing. Now, when you're migrating a site between hosts, that's a different story. So keep that in mind. So assuming that you have access to the site and you just want to say, hey, I'm trying to get it to a different server. Maybe I don't like my hosting server. I've had malware issues or some kind of issue. And you're just moving it over. If you have access and we can actually back up and restore your site, that's much simpler. And there's several ways of doing that, but ultimately that requires you to have that deep admin access in order to do that. It's in those rare cases where we just have no access, but we got to do some SEO. So we're just building a whole new site over to the side and just trying to get them back up there.
Ah, I didn't even know that you could do that. So if we
Mhm.
back up here, Jeremy, a little bit, can you
Mhm.
explain what does that mean, like backing up from a host? And if we can just back that up even some more, like when
Okay.
it comes to web hosting, right? The same project we're dealing with right now. You hear the words registrar. Where did you register your name? Where did you buy your
Okay.
name? Is
Mhm.
that what's the difference between that and like the hosting? Is it different? Is it two different companies? And then like, okay, so you have your hosting, your registrar, and then like the CRM or the platform you build it on. Are all those three different? Are the bills all different? Is the renewals all different? Could it be one of the same? Can you explain that a little
Absolutely.
bit?
Yeah, I can kind of break that down for you a little bit. And the short answer is it might all be packaged into one. It just depends on how you bought it. But essentially all of the pieces can be bought separate. So starting with, I'm a brand new company. I've got nothing at all. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to buy my .com, right? So that's your domain, and you'd go to your domain registrar. So a lot of people use GoDaddy, Namecheap. Google just sold theirs to Squarespace domains. But that's where you actually go and you pay about $20 for most domains for your actual that's your .com. I own this .com, right? Then you go from there and they might sell you hosting at that point. But at that point now you have to say, okay, I have to buy a computer to put my website on. Right. And so that is when you go and you purchase your host. So depending on how you bought your domain in the first place, and a lot of hosts will offer domain services as well. So this could be your site ground. I don't want to leave anybody out that I know, but there's a lot of them out there. But your site ground, your Bluehost, your that kind of thing. So those are your hosting providers, right? And there's a lot of white labels out there as well on those. That's where your website is actually sitting. So think of that as I'm going out and I'm buying a computer, right? Now I got to decide what am I going to put on the computer? Do I want Windows? Do I want Mac OS? And that's your WordPress. So that's your operating system on it, right? So at that point, WordPress is free. If you ever get a bill for WordPress, you signed up for the wrong one, kind of thing. I have had clients that had that happen. WordPress.com and WordPress.org are two different things. WordPress.org is the original, and that's the actual software everybody uses. WordPress.com is like a repackaged version of WordPress where they add extra stuff and it's very managed. But they charge you a lot for not a lot of service, to be fair. But so that's your operating system, is your WordPress. Now, that could be go high level, that could be a lot of things. But keep in mind the way that the different operating systems are built, they don't always sit on the same kind of hosts. So moving a go high level site is not something that can just be migrated over necessarily. It's not something we can just download it and package it up and relaunch it, that sort of thing. So so I think I covered that. So domains, that's your domain registrar, right? And so that's only really about once a year you need to get in there. Anytime someone says you need to update your DNS records for something, you're trying to add something into a site, that's more than likely on your domain registrar, unless you've used basically a connector to put those settings onto your server kind of thing so that you can manage them there. And then your hosting is your backend. So that's your we're not talking about your WordPress backend. We're talking about deeper than that. That's where all your files are stored, your databases are stored. For a lot of people, that's something they never see, kind of thing. It just depends on how deep they are into it. I've met web designers that had never done anything in a server. They'd only ever just built WordPress sites on an existing, installation of WordPress kind of thing. Um, so the back end, though, is where you really need having access to that server and getting into that dashboard. That's your cPanel for a lot of them, or a Plesk dashboard for some. That's where you'll be able to back up and restore. You've got server-side backups. There's a lot of other features there in there outside of WordPress kind of thing. So even if you were locked out of WordPress, I can back up your website just by being able to get into your server and back everything up in there kind of thing.
Now, if we can kind of camp out, because I know there's differences like WPX as in the host pillar
Okay.
here. What's the difference? Because I know you host, right?
Mhm.
So if those of you that don't know, I always recommend two people because I've used them, WPX and Jeremy. So what are some of the differences? What differentiates one over the other? If you can break that down.
Yeah. So what I offer is essentially a version of managed hosting. And so that's kind of a done for you option. I don't allow people into my server, into that backend panel that I'm talking about. But if you were to come to me and say, hey, I need a backup of this site that you're hosting for me, that kind of thing, I offer that kind of support for it. But what I actually ultimately purchase and repackaged as a managed hosting is what's called a dedicated host. And so what that is that's a piece of pie. It's a hard drive, like we were talking about buying your computer. So it's a hard drive in a server room somewhere that is dedicated to me, kind of thing. And then everything is installed and built onto that hard drive. Now, of course, I'm connected to the internet, but on a security standpoint, the only thing that can go wrong is within my computer. So you getting hacked over there in your server stack is not going to affect me over here in mine, kind of thing, because everything that I use in my resources as well. So my computer, my performance, my RAM, everything else is all dedicated to me in that sense. And so that's your dedicated server options. The most common, and this is where I think the budget conversation comes in, where a lot of people are confused. They're like, well, why is one hosting this and one's $1 and one wants $30 a month? Why do I need to go to SiteGround or, one of these other more expensive providers when I can get Bluehost for $2 or whatever it is now? And the difference is they're a shared host. And so what that means is Bluehost, and they have a bunch of them, but just like my dedicated server, they put everybody in there. And then they say, okay, but you get this piece of pie, Alfredo, and Jeremy gets this, and maybe William gets this piece of pie, right? Well, William gets hacked. You don't know anything about it, and then all of a sudden, your guys start getting hacked. Jeremy's over here and he's rocking it, and his websites are just getting tons of traffic. Well, now your guys' websites are slowed down because we're sharing those computer resources at that point. And so that's really the two big ones. Then you get into like cloud hosting services, which are really just kind of rebranding packages of that. And then like your VPS service, I should say, is more of a rebranded package of a shared hosting, a little more secure, and they dedicate some resources to you that way. And then you have like your CDN networks, which basically they create versions of your installation across the world, and so they serve the one that's closest to the person to really increase site speed. There's also some other security factors in there that by doing it that way. But ultimately, there's two types of hosting that you're out there buying for most sites, most agencies when they're trying to put together something is either a dedicated server or a shared server, which I really don't recommend shared servers for anybody, just because of the security risks and things like that that go with it. Um, and then a managed is basically just what I offer is I have a dedicated server, but I take care of it for you so that you don't have to worry about trying to manage this computer that you don't understand. Does that make sense?
So yeah, so when it comes to like hacks, when it comes to malware, when it comes to
Hmm.
viruses, when it comes to backups,
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of the different scenarios that I've been involved in. Like all that comes with your or the
Yeah, so
difference.
not so much to plug myself, but I spent the time and figured out, hey, on a cost standpoint, I would rather have a good priced server, a good priced option for my clients kind of thing, but also include in all those other factors. So really, if you're getting into any managed host, we'll call it, what you really want to look for is, do they offer a server side backup? And that means that regardless of what's going on in WordPress, they're backing up everything, not just for in case they mess something up on their end, but also to make sure that, hey, I somehow clicked a button, I broke my site. Can you guys bring me back a day? Kind of thing. So like mine, I have daily server backups, and then that actually goes to an external secure server that so I have two copies of every backup. So even if like my server were to fail, I still have the backups that can be restored and rebuild my entire server that way. So that's important. Things do happen, hacks do happen, flukes happen, files get corrupted, things like that, even if you didn't do anything wrong. So having those backups is very important. Since I do, in a sense, once you guys are all in there, some clients are on a true dedicated server that I manage just for their clients. Some of them are on what I call my mass server, which that is really more of a shared hosting. But that comes with me in the background running virus scanning checks, malware checks, running updates and that kind of things, to make sure that everybody's staying secure. And if everybody's secure, we're all less likely to get hacked. So it's a safer shared environment that way. And that way I can offer some budget options as well as some more expensive options depending on the client.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to get to, like customer service. Like for example, WPX is great at that.
Hmm.
Jeremy's great at that. The backups, the protection. That's really what I wanted it to kind of, I do a lot of WordPress stuff. In fact, that's all I really work with. So like that's what WPX like really dedicates itself for.
Hmm.
But that's what I wanted to, get that info out there. I don't think we hear it enough, like the differences, like what are they, like do they offer customer service 24/7, the backups, if you get attacked, will they remove it for you if your site goes down, um transfers, are they holding you hostage, are you renting it or is it yours, things of like that nature that sometimes we learn the hard way because we trust somebody or
Absolutely.
something goes wrong. um so I wanted to make sure
It's
we
important to
cover.
know, sorry to cut you off. I just want to
Yeah.
throw in there. It's very important to know when you do go to purchase a website from anybody. It's not just about, how good is it going to look and all these things, but do I own it? Where are you going to host this for me? Where should I put it? Because I've built sites and they didn't want to host with me. I was kind of expensive for what they were doing. They were more personal blog kind of clients and stuff. And we put them on Bluehost, but we built the site to make sure it would perform on Bluehost. And ultimately, like I said, it was a blog site. It was a hobby for that guy I'm thinking of. And that makes perfect sense for that. I wouldn't trust my client, or I wouldn't trust if I was, a local restaurant. I was a small business owner of a restaurant or, a plumbing company. I wouldn't trust my website to go sit on that shared server, and take the risk of that getting hacked. And, that to me, that's my reputation. That's my brand. Um, but if it's less important to you, obviously go with the budget option, go with what makes sense, kind of thing. It's not necessarily a bad option. It's just not necessarily for what we do. if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
So great, great. So Jeremy, I think we talked about registrars, postings, if we can talk about um, CMS, right? Or is it content management systems?
Content management system. So are we talking like WordPress, like differences in that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
this is going to be an opinion one for me. I'll be honest, I don't dig in a whole lot. Unless I have to with like go high level sites, Shopify sites, and that kind of thing. And so those are all different content management systems that kind of compete with WordPress. There's Drupal sites. There's all kinds of ways you could do it. Ultimately, in my opinion, the easiest way to do SEO and to have the most control in the long run is a WordPress based site. Because you absolutely do. You if you can think it up and you can code it, it can happen. And someone
Mhm.
probably already thought it up and made a plugin for it for WordPress. It is kind of the way it works. Um, a lot of work I've done on why am I drawing a blank? What's the other one? Webflow, even. Webflow builds beautiful sites, has a lot of SEO stuff built in. Trying to work the SEO on a Webflow site is just a headache, and it's not because it's harder to word things or harder to put the schema in. There's just no box for it. There's no plugin to add in. You have to write script for everything. And so anything it doesn't do out of the box, you kind of have to code it with a lot of these guys. So that's kind of the trade-off there. It's not that you can't do SEO on those, and I've seen very great performing sites built on those. But a lot more work, in my opinion, went into the back end, which ultimately reflects the cost you're going to end up paying for the SEO. If I have to spend hours to do something that could take 5 minutes in WordPress.
100%. Now, let's talk about, when somebody builds a website, right? Now that we're coming to building, um, how hard is it for you, Jeremy, to like, okay, I'm building for the client, it looks good, the feels good, the color, the schema,
Mhm.
but to also build it for Google and SEO. So it doesn't have 10 H1s. So it's not missing the description. So that the anchor texts are not all the same.
Um,
Like,
you know,
how do you go about that? Or how does somebody like,
so
because
So I'll get into just building a website from scratch. It's a lot of the projects I take on are full website builds. A big part of that is just kind of plan your content before you build the site. Don't try to write content for a design. Like your content is what you're trying to display. Your design is just trying to increase the user experience, right? So a lot of times I see people, they get this template, they start shoving stuff in, and that template, although it covers most of the areas, you actually lost sections of the SEO. A lot of times when people are using page builders, they use, I can drag and drop this piece in and I can fill it in. It looks nice. They don't necessarily realize that there's an H tag selector in that module that they need to go back in and make sure that they actually ordered it the way they intended when they wrote the content for the site kind of thing. So that's a big thing I run into where it's displayed the way that you would expect it, but no one spent the extra time to just click a little drop down and say, hey, this is supposed to be an H2, not an H1. And just because that module was designed to be an H2 doesn't mean it has to be an H2. Your content has to control the flow and the hierarchy of the page.
now
So
all the builders, are you able to do that just as easy as you're saying it?
uh essentially, yeah. When we're talking about WordPress
Mm.
specifically, whether Elementor, raw WordPress and stuff, um, it might be a button in a different place or, a little harder to find the menu. But yeah, it's absolutely just a matter of selecting the right H tag, and then even the same thing most of them, when you go to put in the actual URL, when you're creating a link,
Mhm.
it has either a box right next to it or it uses the default WordPress setup where that little menu actually opens up a separate options and there's a bunch of extra things that you can add to your links. Even if it seems like you just have those two options, you got to open up that little settings menu. And that's where you can do all of your no refers and that kind of stuff is all in there. And that's default to WordPress, like I said. So even if the theme didn't think it through and add those things into their builder, they still link into that when you build a link, and it still has those options to add them in.
Cool. So what I'm hearing you say is whoever's building the website just has to be more on purpose as they're putting it together and
Absolutely.
go like deeper
Yeah.
than okay. Now what about so we're building the site, you say you can manage those H1s and title tags, images, like to optimize the image name, image size for and I'm leading towards my next question is, do we build it for mobile? Do we build it for desktop? Is there a difference? But if we can stick with like images,
Okay. So,
SEOing the image,
uh,
size, name,
yeah.
alt
So,
text.
I mean, first things first is you got to balance the overall size of the image that you're uploading. I mean, I have never found a plugin or anything else that is going to resize or serve your image at the proper size that it could be unless you optimize it before you upload it to the site. Um, and it doesn't, I'm not talking about file type, but you do not need a billboard sized image that's 20 megabytes being uploaded to your site at any point in time, right? So resize your big images that you have down to reasonable sizes. 1080 is the width of most screens. And if you notice, most websites, when you're on a big screen, they just don't use that extra space because that's what we look at is about 1080. And so that's a good target range for most images. If you notice a hero image has been uploaded and it's a little grainy, then go ahead and give it more like a 2560 width, something like that. But start with just shrink down these images that you start with. And then also take into consideration the file type. So you have JPEGs and PNGs and all these different file types. Um, there's tons of software out there. Convert them to WebP, or at least size them down to a reasonable size JPEG. You can get different compressions of them. Ping them themselves are huge, and that's usually what your logo files come in, and they're real pretty, and you can make them super big, and then you display it this big. Well, the website still has to load that massive file to display your tiny version of it. So that's my point is you want to size things reasonably for how you're going to use them. And then make sure that they're converted to a format like WebP that's going to be a really small file size for the same resolution kind of thing. Now you're uploading them to your WordPress site and you've got these smaller files to work with, hopefully under 100 kilobytes a piece, which is what most of your SEO tools will tell you. And then you start adding in your titles and your meta and everything there. Um, this is where it gets hairy. Some page builders use the WordPress. So if you're thinking of like the media center of your WordPress. Some page builders will take from that. Some of them actually have a separate option, so that as you apply the image to the page, you don't have to use that default alt text and all those things you've already set. So you've done the work, but it's not being applied. So you want to make sure that your page builder is actually adding those in, or depending on what you're using, making sure that you're putting them into the right spot to begin with.
Okay, so how does the image or the website itself play into mobile? Are you building the site with mobile in mind, with desktop in mind? Can we do it for both?
Um, I think the proper answer should really be build the site for mobile in mind. But keep in mind, I have to say that lightly because some people think that means build this very long single column page because that's how my phone scrolls, and people are going to have to see that on a desktop. Ultimately, you want to make sure that everything is going to size down as you go. Um, a lot of what WordPress does on its own does do some of that where it's serving the right sized image. Depending on the screen size, a lot of your builders will have those things already kind of built in there, like Elementor and Divi and some of the others. Um, but the big part is if you have a massive image, that has no reason to be massive on the mobile screen, most of those builders give you an option to actually show different images. So upload two different files, one that's super small that just shows up on the mobile, and then put another one on desktop. Little extra work, but now you know you're serving the right image. The other option is to use some kind of a CDN option, which there's some plugins out there that tie into Cloudflare and things like that. You're going to end up paying money for them, but ultimately, um, you can serve your images exactly for what's being requested. So it actually sends a thing to the browser and says, "Hey, what kind of device are we using? What's the size?" And it sends it back, and it serves the exact size image that it needs. So. I was
Cool.
just reading the comments over here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Richard has
Divi does let you use different images. So it doesn't even have to be the same image. It could be a different person depending, you can build a whole different page and show people different things if you want. Um, so that's definitely an option. It does size down and serve better, according to Divi documentation, more recently. But I haven't investigated that, so I don't know if they're actually resizing and serving you anything smaller by default. Is there some kind of CSS or script command that will auto fit the image to a desktop or mobile? Uh, there is some CSS. I mean, you can use when you're actually sizing the image on the page for design reasons. You just want to use like a VW instead of a PX in your CSS. And that's the view width of the page. So like 100 VW would be 100% width of the page. Or VH would be 100% of the height of the page. So that way it's kind of a little more responsive depending on the device. But you want to use those things lightly because ultimately there's so many screens out there. So don't overthink it. Just focus on if you can serve a very small, very sleek desktop site and then optimize that a little bit more for your mobile, I think you guys will be better off. You'll beat your head against the wall trying to optimize every single screen size if you get too deep into it. So I guess it really comes down to how much you want to optimize them. How bad is the speed on mobile when you run those tests, and that kind of thing.
yeah,
So
100%. Richard, use. Did you get all of those?
one more time.
All the questions. Did you get to all of them?
I think so. I always use reduce size using Photoshop. Yeah, I agree, Carlos.
And then
Depending on the
Carlos
site, to be
is
honest, I always I do a little extra. I'll go and I'll drop a default image in a design I'm doing, and then I'll actually pull what it's going to serve on a standard screen, and then I'll put that into Photoshop to upload the image. Depending on the design level we're going into of the site, and of course the SEO that's been paid for and that kind of thing. Those are good default sizes. I agree. Yeah, I think we covered everything over there, man.
all right, cool.
And I think we covered the different types of hosting. Um, any other question? Hey, Jeremy, say if you have big right, shows everything with a flaw and has a big warning. Is there more to that question? What kind of warning?
So guys, I'm gonna open it up. If you guys
Yeah.
have a specific question, something specific. Um, I know Richard, I'm not sure if you got
Okay,
yours taken care of. Go ahead, Carlos. Yeah.
it's like what I was asking was, like, say if you have a big old error, like, well, there's an error in this on top of your website,
Are you
and
talking like a fatal error and then it gives you like tries to tell you where the fatal error is? Is that the
Yeah,
work
no,
there?
what I'm talking about is Richard.
Oh, okay. I see what you're talking.
I
Richard.
just
Undefined
dropped
array
it in.
key in the options. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, you see that
That's
warning above the website if you opened up on the link?
Yeah, so that is that being there can be hidden. It's not a fatal error, it's a warning.
Yeah,
So
but
it, it
the website itself doesn't load up correctly, and
let
I'm
me see
thinking it's
here.
like a plugin conflict.
It's a good possibility that whatever is causing this array error. So, I mean, I'd have to dig into it further. That's not a whole lot to go on, kind of thing. You'd have to get into the files, but it's talking about an Elementor profile. Possibly resetting a cache will clear it, and possibly just your scripts and things didn't load properly, which would also explain why it looks like maybe you're missing a lot of CSS that's not loading on the page. So my first guess would be caching. My second guess would be check your Elementor Pro subscription and make sure that that's up, because it's directly linking to an Elementor profile that's having a problem. And it's how it displays the site logo. That's the site
Yeah.
logo PHP there.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so uh, even myself, I wouldn't go to that file and try and find the error on 192 and fix it. I would assume that something's wrong with my Elementor Pro installation, and then I'd want to work on it from there and kind of backtrace it.
So that's kind of my issue. Okay, so this is an Elementor site, but it's not a pro site, right? And
Mhm.
I just don't believe I've used any of the pro plugins, right? So basically how this came about is, I had a mobile speed load of like 30, and I was watching YouTube videos on trying how to, increase the speed.
Yeah.
And somehow I did this. Oh, I've kind of been, and sometimes it'll load, I think, because when I checked the link just before I sent it to you, it loaded kind of okay. But
Mhm.
other times it looks like, it's not formatted in that, if you go back to school where they tell you not to write outside of the margins, well, mine's way all outside of the margins. Alfredo knows. I think he saw it Wednesday. He knows what I'm talking about. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'd have to be able to get into the back end to really help you out more, but I would look at like I said, caching, anything you've done with caching. And then more than likely you might be caching CSS twice, kind of thing. So look at any plugins you were doing for site speed that had to do with that. A lot of times your optimization plugins cannot be stacked together. So if one of them is generating a cache for your CSS, the other one cannot do anything with it, because it's going to try and cache a cached version of CSS, and that's going to break everything. So that could be the other thing too, is you're breaking Elementor, but it's actually two other plugins that are conflicting with each other, and it's sending bad information to Elementor, so now it doesn't know what to do with it.
So
If
in
that
other
kind of makes
words,
sense.
if I loaded Lightspeed cache on there and this
Mhm.
and that, and then I also loaded up like another plugin to kind of help me with the CSS, that's what could be really screwing me up.
More than likely, that's right on the head. Lightspeed cache
Gotcha.
is going to handle your CSS. So if you're not getting the performance that you want after setting up Lightspeed cache,
Yeah.
without the other stuff, more than likely, that's what I was talking about. You got to do a little more detail, start with the smaller files, and kind of figure out what's actually causing your page load issue, and that kind of thing. Because Lightspeed does take care of most things.
Yeah.
It's
I've
one of the better
mentioned,
plugins.
I have mentioned to him to start disabling plugins, so that he could get to the root of the problem of the plugin. Now, if there was a plugin factor,
Mhm.
then he could email the provider, ask for support. Look, this is what I'm having when I load
Mhm.
your plugin. I'm thinking it's a plugin conflict of some sort.
So based on what you guys are telling me, and I could be completely wrong, without looking at it, you're going to want to go in there and disable any of your other caching plugins, leave Lightspeed up, and then go up to the top where the little Lightspeed cache like diamond icon is, and you'll have a
Right.
purge all
Purge it.
caches.
Yeah.
So clear out your other one and then hit the purge all caches. That will regenerate new caches, and that should kind of tell you if that's your problem. If that doesn't work, purge all the caches and then disable Lightspeed altogether, and then just kind of start diagnosing from there. But you're absolutely right. Start disabling plugins. The only difference is with caching plugins, they don't always have a call to basically delete their caches when you disable them. So you have to do more than just disabling them. You have to
Yeah,
clear their caches
you have
before
to purge
disabling
it.
them
You have
on
to
a lot of
purge.
them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. You have to purge and stuff.
You
And
have
I've
to purge before you disable or after?
Before you disable the plugin, because that's where you're going to have the button to purge the caches from that plugin.
Got you.
So you
Okay.
basically want to be like purge cache, deactivate, don't let it load a page. Because
Okay.
when it loads a front end page, that's when it's generating the cache. the first
Uh-huh.
time. So if you stay on your WordPress dashboard, purge the cache, and then click over to your plugin so you can deactivate it there,
Okay.
then you're deactivating it and you know it's not holding on to a cache file somewhere.
Okay.
So the other thing too is your browser cache. So load your page in an incognito window after you've done that to know for sure what you're serving, because your own browser could be caching this error and it will keep
Yeah.
showing it, and you'll end up beating your head against the wall even though you already fixed your problem 20 minutes ago. So ask me how I know, guys.
I'm
So,
running out of head, Jeremy. I'm telling you, man. I'm running out of stuff.
been there, man.
So I had you mentioned something to kind of switch gears a little bit, and if you covered it and I missed it,
It's
I
okay.
apologize. But you talked about when you were building a site or creating a site, like if you knew you were going to put the site on Blue hosting, you would build it specifically to accommodate Blue hosting. And I was just curious what you would
Mhm.
do that would be different for like Blue hosting as opposed to like SiteGround or some other hosting company. And what would
So,
you? Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. If there's more to it, go ahead. I didn't
No,
mean to
no,
cut you off.
that was
So what that comes down to is I would not build anything heavy whatsoever. You're probably not going to run SEO even on a Bluehost site, but the main thing is any page builder that you put on does add weight to a site. Because then you're more than likely adding more CSS, more scripts, more things for the page to have to load. And basically it's just because you can run the software on grandma's old computer doesn't mean you should. So basically run lighter software. So everything I do with those, I try to go raw WordPress, no theme, just use what's built into WordPress. Add basic caching plugins that work with them pretty well. And other than that, that's the big thing. Images have to stay small. You're not going to serve any really high quality images. You're not going to put a photographer's website on Bluehost. It just won't work. Things like that.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
So hopefully that helped. The site does look a lot better than yesterday. 100%.
Yeah, it's temperamental, man. Some days it looks good, other days.
Yeah. If you guys want to send me a message afterwards, and I don't mind, I'll go in there and take a look. If it's just a caching issue, we might be able to sort that out for you. So
Yeah, I mean, and if you don't mind, I mean, I'm happy and welcome for all the help that I can get, because like I said,
yeah, absolutely.
this has been driving me to the verge of insanity
I've
for a
been there.
while.
I've been there. So yeah, of course, guys. If send me a message. I have a lot of people that send me a message like that. If it's something as simple as just kind of educating you guys on what went wrong and clicking a couple buttons, I don't charge anything. So feel free to shoot your questions, and just bear with me if it takes me a day or so to get back to you. Sometimes I have a lot of those questions in my inbox. So
Well, that's great to know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well,
do you want to drop something in the chat on how we can reach you? I have no idea how to reach you.
Yeah,
Or is
absolutely.
it in the Facebook or?
Yeah, so
Alex?
I think you got my Facebook profile there. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Oh,
that's the
okay.
best way for those kind of questions. If
Gotcha.
you're looking for like an actual project, a website build or something like that, my website is just my name, JeremyWebb .dev,
Okay.
short for developer. And so you can come check out some of my work and stuff there and that kind of thing. But otherwise, like best way to reach me is just on Facebook Messenger and shoot your questions over, and I'll try and help you guys out when I can.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of fortuitous because I dropped this in when we had the podcast Wednesday with Chris Palmer, and he's like, "Oh, you need a web developer or a PHP," and then I saw
Sometimes you do,
Alfredo
and
was
I
up, and
might
was
tell
like,
you
"Oh,
that when we're
perfect."
done, guys. To be fair, I might tell you, hey, this is the kind of work you got to pay to have someone debug. But
Well,
if it's
yeah,
simple stuff, and I think there's a disconnect a lot of times where a lot of these companies, Elementor, Divi, and they sell people on this idea that anybody can build a website, and you guys get in there and no one explained to you the difference, like you can't stack caching plugins and stuff. And then you go to their support and they say, well, hire a developer. And so I think a lot of us and a lot of people in the SEO world too that aren't necessarily developers are like, I guess that's what we have to do when that happens, kind of thing. And it's as simple as, just resetting a cache or something simple like that. So
Well,
Okay,
and kind of like
Jeremy,
what you were saying. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carlos. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh Jeremy,
Yeah.
just went to the link and added you as a friend. Just a heads up.
Oh, okay. Absolutely.
And also, I've also asked Richard. He should also contact his hosting company. They could help him out as well.
They might. That goes back to
mean-
the support level when you buy your hosting, depending on who you're hosting with. Some of them are very helpful. The company that I purchase my stuff that I resell, they're very helpful when I get lost. They've taught me things over the years, that kind of thing. But it all just depends. But it is a WordPress side issue that you're having. It's not a server issue. So a lot of them will default to this is WordPress, not us, kind of thing.
Right,
So
but they're gonna give them, okay, you're gonna have to disable plugins and blah blah blah. And cache.
50-50.
They're gonna also tell
50-50.
them
It depends on the
caching.
host and their support level. It really
Yeah,
does.
it depends.
So
Like
yeah.
you mentioned, we were talking about hosting and domain names, registrars.
Mhm.
See, for my customers, I use Namecheap because
Mhm.
to me is a domain name is cheaper there than it is in GoDaddy or HostGator. And I don't use HostGator I use another different hosting
Mhm.
for the sites. I don't do the hosting because let's say tomorrow I die and then their business is gone. So I let them take care of their own hosting.
Fair enough. So yeah, as far as that goes, you can absolutely buy your domain wherever, and you're not married to them for the rest of it. Like I was saying. And then like if you're buying it for clients, you're an agency that's hearing this. Look at what matches for what you're offering people. And in that sense, I wouldn't go necessarily to a Bluehost, to a full shared hosting. But something like what I offer or a SiteGround, just something to set yourself up some good infrastructure to store your client websites on. If you want to go that route. I've known some people that completely break off and get a hosting account for each of their clients and that kind of thing. It all goes in the business model and what works for you. But yeah, when it comes to domains, it doesn't make any difference really. Buy it where it's cheap and go with that kind of thing. Or maybe you like the dashboard where you go to buy domains is nicer or that kind of thing. But it makes no difference at all to the end website.
So guys, with that being said, we're coming up to the 60-minute mark. And I don't know if I asked you this before, Jeremy. I know you're part of the team, part of the family, but just so people so they can get to know you. And I like to ask this of all our guests, right?
Yeah.
What is a fun fact about you that nobody
Oh
knows?
gosh, that nobody knows. I feel like I'm an open book. People know the fun facts about me. That's the thing. So what a lot of people don't know, even though I feel like I put it out there, is I come from a world of retail, and I basically about 3 years ago I started this job because I wanted to go home, kind of thing. And so that's something I feel like got lost somewhere in the mix of all my web designer stuff. So everything I do is about just giving back to businesses. I did the whole corporate America thing. I fought with all that nonsense. I really like helping little guys, kind of thing, as cheesy as that might sound, or maybe sound like a marketing thing. But yeah, that's really where I come from. That's my fun fact. Is I like helping people out in the small businesses that just kind of get trampled by the bigger businesses that can't get their marketing together, and that kind of thing. I think that's silly. I think all of us, should build the small business world and make all of us big businesses. You know what I mean? So
Awesome. I appreciate that, guys. So those that are catching the replay, those that are on Facebook Live, Carlos, Richard, I appreciate you guys. Jeremy, as always, thank you for all your help and that you give to our community. So guys, have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. Stay positive, stay healthy. And with that being said, much love, much success, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks.